wonderful break from the life of David to witness his 6 baptisms. That was a lot of fun for this Sunday. We're going to return to David's story today, and we're actually going to back up a hair. As we've done this, David has established himself as king. He's firmly in control of the kingdom, but we're going to back up a step to when Saul, the previous king, falls. And when Saul ceases to be king, it's at a moment in which the great enemy, the Philistines, have taken control over the area. They are pretty much the big kingdom at the moment. And as Israel falls, there is chaos. There is confusion as everything is going wrong because the king falls, he dies in battle. In the same battle, the crown prince, Jonathan, he is also killed. Jonathan has one son, and he survives. He's 5 years old. His name, according to 1 Chronicles, is Mephibosheth. It's not how he's going to be known in 1 Samuel, but it's what he's called in Chronicles. We don't know what happened to his mother, if she was part of the story or not. But as his 5-year-old is going through this time of chaos, his nurse grabs him, and in the chaos is running in panic, I guess. And something happens. She falls. This young 5-year-old prince breaks both of his ankles. And there's chaos. I don't know, maybe they couldn't find an x-ray machine or something. Anyways, his ankles do not heal properly. They run away. There's chaos. The Philistines have taken control. David, this enemy of Saul, is growing in power. And they fly off to a place called Lodabar, which basically means no pasture. And we're not entirely sure where it was, but it's basically, the town name means you can't live here. You can't sustain life here. It's nowhere. And the nurse and maybe some of the other family and servants of Saul go to this place of nowhere. For hiding. And Mephibosheth, at some point, changes his name to Mephibosheth. Don't worry about getting the names of these places or names of these people right. Sometimes we read these names and they're hard to pronounce, but you know what? Even if you're a modern day Hebrew speaker, nobody knows how they were spoken 3,000 years ago. We may be pronouncing them all wrong still today. We're going to call him that. But his name is significant. His name basically means seething dishonor, which is kind of a nasty. If we were to slow it down, it's kind of like this: angry about the loss of my honor. It's not a name you would give a prince who is about to become king. But it is a name that might come to a prince who's fallen from power. One who has lost his regal nature. One who has lost everything. I don't know if he gave himself this name, or if those around him gave him this name, that I am angry about my dishonor. But he gains it nonetheless. And he's off with this nurse. We're later going to come across one of Saul's servants by the name of Ziba, who may or may not have been with him at this stage. We know there's other survivors of Saul's family. They may or may not be with him. But you can imagine this little colony, I suppose, of refugees. And they are trying to survive. And at night, they gather around the fire and they start talking. What will they be talking about? Of course they'd be remembering. Remember back in the palace days, we had lots of food. Remember back in those days, we had fine clothes. Back when Saul was king, we had honor. We had prestige. We had a nice place to live. And then they would look around at this place with a lack of food. They would look down at their clothes that were rags. They would look at their situation of living basically in hiding as refugees. For Mephi, he was the oldest son of the oldest son of the king. He should be king. But everything is wrong, even to the point that his ankles are not right. How bitterness must have risen against David. Do you think there's hatred, self-pity? The small, hidden, exile community is doubtlessly recounting past stories of glory and remembering that they've lost it all. And as you're recounting stories of loss, what happens? They get bigger, don't they? The stories get more and more bitter. The stories get more and more angry. The stories of remembering what they've been what is in their minds being stolen from them. The stories are all about the great injustices to Saul's family, to Mephi, to one angry at the loss of honor. Victim mentality is common, even in times of good moments. But how about in these moments of absolute loss? A victim mentality would certainly take over. David is a dark presence of resentment. David is some faceless, distant evil that had stolen away the throne and had tricked the nation into obedience, at least in their minds. Probably they are angry at God as well. He's not on my side. Perhaps he's even avenged by God. As a result, these people have lost everything. Now, David knows nothing that one of Jonathan's sons has survived at this stage. He would have a very different viewpoint. At least he should. Because the existence of Jonathan's oldest son is a threat to his kingdom. Mephi is dangerous. He's a potential rival. He could be the one true king. Some scholars have read the story and kind of thought, well, he's lame. Could he have ever become king? Well, as we read through the story, he does seem to be a threat. And at very least, we know he had a son. The oldest son of the oldest son of the oldest son of the king. He also is a threat to become king. We know that the tribe of Saul, as we go through David's story, is not very loyal. And so Mephi's very existence is a threat to David. We're going to go forward a few chapters to chapter 9. We don't know how many years pass between these chapters. It's not very long in the Bible, but Mephi's 5 last time we see him. Now he is married, he's a father, So we don't know entirely how old he is. We know among the Jewish community in the New Testament times, you have to be generally 30 to be a married male. Probably not true at this stage. We don't know for sure. But several years have passed anyways. And David is in the throne room and he's remembering the crown prince that never became king. He's remembering his friend Jonathan. And he turns to everybody and says, isn't there somebody in Jonathan's family I can be kind to? We don't know. Perhaps some time passes before he gets an answer. Because eventually the answer comes out, do you know what? Saul's chief servant, Ziba. He's been spotted. He's been seen. Maybe he knows of a hidden little group of Saul's family. And so they bring Ziba forward, and clearly he is aware of Mephi's existence. Perhaps even in some sort of contact with him, maybe even living with him. David's intentions are kindness, not to flesh out an old enemy. But Ziba, I don't know how much he understood, but he coughs up Mephi's existence and location. So he sent some soldiers together. Now you can imagine this hidden little colony of exiles. Some soldiers come marching in. Right away, probably it's not a big deal initially. They get angry, of course, when the enemy soldiers come in. Stupid David and his blind, unreasonably loyal troops. Keep moving along. They don't move. They stop. They come up to them. Hey, by chance, was your grandfather the old king? Terror starts to rise. I'm sure he denied it at first, but they didn't buy it. You need to come with us. And I don't know if it was a long walk or maybe they sent a donkey to take this lame man. But as he's going along on the trip to Jerusalem, I'm sure the soldiers are saying, don't worry about it, David's a good guy. But for years, he's heard nothing but bad about David. For years, he's done nothing but tell himself bad about David. And fear is growing in his mind. We are our own worst enemies sometimes. Our imaginations certainly are. And when there's bad, we play it up. When there's somebody we're angry with, we exaggerate it. When there's somebody we perceive as an enemy, we blow it out of proportion. That is just normal human existence. We all do it. We sit around, we talk about people. God, it becomes worse and worse, and certainly that is happening here. And they get to Jerusalem, and Mephi gets there expecting anger from the king, jealousy, suspicion. But we know a little bit about David. Chapter before this, in chapter 8, it says this, so David reigned over all Israel, and David administered justice and equity to all his people. Not just those he got along with, not just those who were supporters, all his people. And so they get to Jerusalem in chapter 9, verse 7. It says, David says this, do not fear. For I will show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. And I will restore to you all the land of Saul your father, and you shall eat at my table always. Kindness. There's some debate about whether that's the best word to capture what the Hebrew says. Mostly because this is not one that's just wrapped around in sentimentality. It's a word about deliberate choice. I am going to treat you well, no matter what. It was a bad choice, really, for David, at least politically. He's bringing in a rival. He's not only bringing in a rival, he's giving him a seat at the table. You will eat at my table. He's giving him access to power. Jesus, much later, in the Gospel of John, he's before his disciples, and he says this: they shall know you are my disciples because of the fact that you use street smarts to get out of a jam. Is that what it says? By the way that you stand up for yourself. Jesus gets up and says, people will know that you're my disciples by the way you love one another. And we may look at that. If we just had that verse, we'd say, well, yeah, we can love one another. That's not so hard. I can love people like me. We read from Luke 6 earlier, which it takes another step further. Anybody can love those who are like them. I want you to love those who are not like you. I want you to love those who are different. I want you to love them. And David is acting that out, isn't he? I mean, he's been shown kindness in his life, and he's learning from it. And he is demonstrating it. David actively seeks out an enemy to love. He actively goes to the ones who are hardest to love. And he knows he's going to treat them in a way that they do not earn. David had been mistreated by Saul and his family. Terribly mistreated. But he doesn't dwell there. He is a victim, but he doesn't live as a victim. And so he comes to Mephibosheth. Do not fear. He had a real reason to fear. But kindness is going to win the day. David speaks and acts with kindness. In fact, he pulls Ziba, the servant, over and says, I want you to, just like you serve Saul, I want you to serve his grandson here. And so Mephibosheth takes his young son Micah. They move from nowhere, Lodabar, no pasture land. They move from there to Jerusalem because of a remarkable act of kindness. We're not given here his reaction. We don't know at what point he can change from becoming a victim to seeing himself as blessed. But we do know as he eats at the king's table. I don't know that he pledged his allegiance or anything to David. All I know is David was kind. To him, as well as Ziba, are given a seat at the table. We're going to move to one more scene now. It's a couple of chapters later. It occurs in both chapters 16 and 19 of 2 Samuel. And we're going to skip ahead. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to give you some spoilers to what's coming. On May 4th, Sunday, May 4th, we're going to look at a rebellion between Absalom, David's son, and David. And you have to make me a promise. If I give you some spoilers now, on May 4th, look surprised, okay? We're jumping ahead, but that's okay. Basically, what's going to happen is David's son's going to rebel. David's going to lose the throne for a period of time. He flees. A few remain loyal to him. And even as he flees, the odd one shows up as he's now a refugee showing support. One of the ones who shows up out of the blue to show support is that servant, Ziba. And this servant shows up, this servant of Saul, this servant of Mephibosheth. He's one of them. He shows up with a few donkeys and a whole lot of food to help feed those who are fleeing. And David looks at him, basically, way to go, Ziba, for showing up. Servant of my former enemy, thank you for your support. Thank you for your kindness. But I do have to ask, where's Mephi in all this? Where's the one I showed kindness to? And basically the answer is, right now, the government is in chaos. We've got two potential kings, and Mephi, he wants to sneak up the middle. He wants to become king. He's going to try to seize the throne. So I've left him behind back in Jerusalem. David is at a real low point, and he orders all Mephi's lands to go to Ziba. He has no authority at this stage because he's kind of out as king. But hey, again, not to give away too many spoilers, but David is going to win back the throne. He does come back. Again, May 4th, gasp in astonishment. He gets back to Jerusalem, and one of the first people he meets when he gets back to Jerusalem is Mephi. Now he's heard this report. He's trying to seize the throne, but as Mephi walks up to David, he's dressed in mourning rags. He hasn't cut his hair. He hasn't shaved his beard in weeks. He looks disheveled, and to put it bluntly, he doesn't look kingly. If you're trying to run for office or an election these days, somebody who shows up in rags, hasn't washed, hasn't done their hair up, hasn't shaved, they don't vote for those people. That's kind of how he looks. He doesn't look like he's trying to become king. He looks like he's in mourning, and he walks up to David. And he looks in this mourning, and he just says to David, I am so glad you're back. And David looks at him and says, where were you? And he looks at him, Matthew, looks at David. I know you've heard some stories. Know that the truth of the matter is I was getting ready, I was getting food and donkeys together to come find you, when all of a sudden, I'm moving slow, my feet are bad. My servant took off. And he went to you, and I know you've heard stories. I know you've given away all my life. I don't care. I'm just glad you're back. And David looks, and he's got two people here, Ziba and Mephi, who are telling him different stories. It's remarkable to me how often I'll sit down with somebody, they'll tell me a story, and they're upset with somebody. I talk to the other person that they're upset with, and they tell me their version of the story, and you would swear they're telling two totally different stories. It's not even different sides. And I think that's kind of what's happening here. And David hears both sides of the story, and in the end, he's king. How is he going to judge this? Who's telling the truth? And David's response basically is, who cares? I will be kind to both of you. And David divides land. Mephi says, I don't care, he can have the whole bit. But David does not care who has offended him. He does not find it worthwhile to probe deeper into this. Truth matters. And what is truth? Jesus comes along and gives us a definition of truth when he stands for his disciples and says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. You want to know the truth? It's not trying to figure out human events. It's trying to know Jesus. That's what truth is. Proverbs 21, verse 21 says, whoever pursues righteousness and kindness will find life, righteousness, and honor. You want to know God? Chase after kindness. Chase after doing what's right. In Ephesians chapter 4, Apostle Paul says, be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another as God in Christ forgave you. In other words, I want you to mirror how God is treating you. The more we do that, the more we will understand Jesus, because we're acting like him. David at this moment is fatigued. He's devastated by civil war, by the death of his son, but he's not focused there. But he's focused on how can I show my enemies kindness. We once again enter into David's story. It is one of compassion. It cries out love. David has experienced love at the hand of God, at the hand of others. And he is determined that he will show that would be his outlook. I've often heard among people within the evangelical church about how important obedience is and things like that. And as you talk to people, people believe that. As long as it's not too hard or impractical. And sometimes showing kindness and love to enemies is hard and impractical. It's where really the heart of the matter is. David is doing something very different than how the world acts. He's seeking opportunities to obey. Looking for moments in which he can obey when it's hardest. I'm going to tell you, I more often than not fall into this category. I know what the Bible says about kindness and love of my enemies, but it's hard right now. It's impractical right now. It's tough. And here's the call of somebody who goes out of his way to seek and to look for those moments when he can love when it's hardest. We enter into David's story once again. We let it push us a little bit in our thinking and our ways of understanding the Christian life. And prayerfully seek for God to lead us in the same way. I'm going to invite our worship team to come forward as we contemplate God.